reaction to the judge's rulings. But first, let's just lay out what happened here. A federal judge on Friday paused the Trump administration's midnight deadline to cut USAID's workforce by thousands of employees. Judge Carl Nichols, a 2019 Trump appointee, issued a restraining order pausing the administrative leave of more than 2,000 agency employees, along with a plan to withdraw nearly all of its overseas workers within 30 days. He also ordered a temporary reinstatement of 500 agency employees already on leave. The decision came after federal employee unions filed a motion for a temporary pause on the plan, claiming it violates the Constitution. The development is the latest in a number of legal actions against President Trump's executive orders. At least 10 lawsuits have been filed in response to President Trump's orders on immigration and citizenship. The majority of those are focused on the White House's push to end birthright citizenship. Multiple judges have stopped this order from taking effect, including a Washington state district judge who was appointed by Ronald Reagan. He slammed Trump's order last week, writing, quote, "It has become ever more apparent that to our president, the rule of law is but an impediment to his policy goals. The rule of law is, according to him, something to navigate around or simply ignore, whether that be for political or personal gain." Then there are the issues related to January 6th. Two different groups of FBI agents and employees have sued to stop the Trump administration from releasing the names of those who worked on the investigations into the insurrection. On Friday, the government agreed to withhold the names while the case is ongoing. President Trump's attempts to freeze trillions of dollars in federal funding was stopped after both a group of nonprofit organizations and a group of nearly 24 state attorneys general sued. And most recently, on Saturday, a judge ruled that political appointees and special government employees like Elon Musk and Doge should not have access to the Treasury Department systems until a lawsuit on the issue is resolved. As the New York Times reports, the situation could pose a fundamental test of America's rule of law. If the administration fails to comply with the emergency order, it is unclear how it might be enforced. The Constitution says that a president shall take care that the laws be faithfully executed. But courts have rarely been tested by a chief executive who has ignored their orders, and therein lies the rub. Joining us now, legal affairs correspondent for the New York Times, Mattathias Schwartz. And you guys have a quick guide to the lawsuits against the Trump orders. You've written this piece. I guess it's 4 categories: immigration, budget freezes and firings, transgender rights, January 6th investigators. Is there a way to put this in order of, I guess, most dangerous?
Well, I think the big picture here, Mika, and thank you for having me this morning, is that the federal courts appear to be the final or last bulwark for this offensive where Donald Trump is trying to take as much executive power as he can for himself. And the number of lawsuits, there are more than 40 so far, is going to continue to increase as the president continues to move forward with his agenda. Now, so far, we have seen, I think more than half a dozen lawsuits on the birthright citizenship executive order alone. That executive order seeks to restrict the 14th Amendment's guarantee to birthright citizenship, to take it away from the children of undocumented immigrants, to also take it away from the children of some legal immigrants. So that's very important. I think when you look at the docket, that's a case that it's very easy to imagine going up to the Supreme Court. And then, there are many others. You said earlier that judges have ordered a variety of President Trump's actions to be stopped, but that doesn't really answer the question of whether they're actually going to stop. Right. And we're already seeing some early indications as of now already that the administration is not complying with orders from federal judges. We were seeing that in a Rhode Island case about the $3 trillion budget freeze. And I could give you a couple other examples as well. USAID, for example, that agency has been completely gutted. So a judge says, give the people back their jobs, open the office back up. Is the administration going to do that? How long is it going to take? Are they going to drag their heels? Are we going to see contempt orders from judges? That would be a real Rubicon. So yeah, it's a pretty unprecedented situation. Not completely unprecedented. We have seen presidents ignore orders from courts before, but usually it's in a far more limited way and during wartime.
Caddy.
So, Matthias, is the assumption that Donald Trump is deliberately setting up some kind of situation where one of these cases ends up in the Supreme Court and he is counting on the fact that he has a court that is friendly to him and he would win in that court? Or is there then a counter argument that actually the court is going to look at the very number of things that Donald Trump is trying to do and say, well, actually, because he's trying to do so many, it's clear that what he's trying to do is expand the executive's power rather than try and get each one of these individual cases through. So how do we have a sense of how the court would respond, I guess?
It's a great question. I can't predict what the Supreme Court's going to do. I can't speak to President Trump's intent. I will say that we saw with Trump v. USA that the court does show a lot of deference to executive power. This court in particular, I think if I had to guess, it's a total guess. President Trump would probably get this court to overturn some big precedents. We saw their willingness to do this with Dobbs, but he would not get everything he wanted. And I think there's a bigger question here. If he received a judicial order from Chief Justice John Roberts calling one of his White House's actions unconstitutional, would he obey that order? Because when I read J.D. Vance's tweet yesterday, Vice President Vance's tweet yesterday, saying that only the executive has the authority, only the judges aren't allowed to control the executive's legitimate power, it seems to hint at the possibility that he might not. And that would be a far graver and more dangerous scenario to our constitutional order than simply the Supreme Court overturning some big precedents to expand executive power, which itself in normal times would be a very big deal. But there's an even larger, a worry looming on the horizon, and it's in that tweet.
Yeah, it is. Legal affairs correspondent for the New York Times, Matthias Schwartz. Thank you so much for this piece and for coming on the show this morning. So we mentioned the reaction from the right to the ruling against Elon Musk and Doge. Musk slammed the judge, calling him corrupt and writing on social media that he needs to be impeached. He even floated a new idea that the quote, worst 1% of appointed judges should be fired every year. That post has received almost 300,000 likes. Vice President J.D. Vance also chimed in on social media. The Yale Law School graduate argued, quote, judges aren't allowed to control the executive's legitimate power. And Senator Mike Lee of Utah, who also went to law school, posted about the decision multiple times from his personal account. He wrote that he agreed with the vice president's position, calling it 100% accurate. He also called the ruling a judicial coup. So, Joe, there does seem to be kind of a lead up to something majorly unprecedented, and that will require a lot of questions as to what the next step is. But let's keep it right here for now.
The tweet, though, was circular.
I know.
It made no sense, and it made no sense because the legitimate powers of the President of the United States is not determined by the President of the United States or the Vice President of the United States. Take that down.
Well,
Vice President of the United States. No, listen to me. Listen. You need to understand. Everybody needs to understand in reading this. It is the Supreme Court of the United States who determines what the legitimate power of the president is, of the vice president is, of what Congress is. That is the way it has been since John Marshall was the first Supreme Court justice. This is trolling. And I will say, and we will give examples for Mike Lee, who also went to law school, to say this is a, quote, judicial coup. This is all planned. They decided they were going to do these things that pushed the boundary of the law, that went over the line. This is all planned. Because let me tell you something. Again, we're going to show you a list of presidential actions that were enjoined, stopped, overturned during the Biden administration. And we could go back and do the same thing during the Bush administration, during the Clinton administration. This is how things are. So when you say a court cannot stop a president from doing what's in its legitimate power to do, well, yes, of course that's true. But it is the court that determines the contour